Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Earthdawn Survival Guide, a podcast for novices and masters alike. We hope you've mastered some of the things we've talked about. Not sure we have, but we're at least working on that over there. I am, of course, Dan. My co-host is, of course, Josh, line developer.
Hello, everyone. It's a moment to learn. Well, probably more than a moment for Earthdawn, but a lifetime to master.
Exactly.
They said that about, good games are like that.
Totally. Yes.
Minutes to learn,
yes.
A lifetime to master.
Yes. And on today's podcast, we'll be discussing all things aeronautical.
Yes.
Yes, because today we are going to talk all about air sailors. Nothing else, just the quintessential Earthdawn discipline, air sailors. You don't come across them in a lot of other games. In fact, I can't think of any off the top of my head. And there's only a couple of novels I've ever come across something like an airship as well. So those were kind of interesting to know about. So if you have any questions for us before or after we get into all this, and any questions we don't answer about air sailors, by all means, email us at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. Where do you want to start? Just on...
Let's start, I think, perhaps with a little bit of context, like historical context within the framework of Earthdawn development. Air Sailor is one of two disciplines that were not part of the original first edition core group. The other one being Scout.
Yes. Scouts.
If you look at if you grab the original first edition book, there are only 13 disciplines in it rather than the 15 that you'll find in later editions. I don't remember offhand now whether second edition included the Air Sailor and Scout in their list or not.
I believe they did.
Anyway. The Air Sailor and the Scout were both introduced in the Earthdawn Companion as examples of things that you could make with the discipline creation rules that were included in that book.
Yes, and I use those rules heavily.
Yeah. We're not going to get into those rules.
No.
The purpose of the Air Sailor, if I'm recalling correctly, the genesis of the Air Sailor actually resulted from the writing of Chris Kubasik in the original Earthdawn trilogy. Lou has talked about the Air Sailor basically came from the conflict or in the descriptions that were written about the conflicts between the Theron air sailors and the Crystal Raiders, the Sky Raiders, that the Theron sailors had a very different style to them that that wasn't really reflected in the way that that was reflected by the other aeronautical discipline, that being the Sky Raider. And so the Air Sailor discipline was originally created sort of to fill that role. And it has since gone on to be considered one of the core 15, along with the Scout. In part, I think, because there were in-character essays for both the Air Sailor and the Scout that were included in the Adept's Way, which basically sort of defined the core disciplines in first edition. So that's where that came from, and it is within that framework, and the in-character essay from the original Adept's Way, and the talent selections that they originally had, that kind of defined the role of the Air Sailor, which has shifted a little bit, but not hugely so, over the course of the various editions. And I don't think we're really gonna get into like a historical analysis of like, oh, here's what their talent selections were in first edition and like the actual mechanical development. But I think that the understanding of where the discipline came from is helpful when you go to look at it, because in some respects, where many of the other disciplines in Earthdawn, at least to a greater or lesser extent, align with certain archetypes within fiction and pop culture and things like that, the Air Sailor does not quite so much. Like it's not
fair.
It's not immediately obvious where they go. Now, So if you were to, there's that context. So to pitch this back to you, if you were to try and sum up, like if you were elevator pitching,
yes,
like if you were sitting down with somebody who really didn't know Earthdawn at all, and you were like going to be helping them make their first character, and you were basically like running through the various disciplines. Okay. What would be your like really brief pitch? Like, okay, this is the air sailor. They
X.
what?
Air sailors are the travelers of Barsave, and they're the crew of any airship out there. They know how to pilot it, operate it, keep it in good repair, and the best analogy I can give you is if you like the TV show Firefly, you live on a ship at all times. You occasionally dock, do other things, have a small adventure, but you always come back to the ship.
Okay.
That's my quick little 10-second elevator pitch on that one.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
How'd I do?
No, that's okay. It is tough to do that. So there's that. Then expanding upon that, what would you say is are sort of the core, like they're travelers, but what are some of the other like core conceits or themes that you would see in play with an air sailor?
They are vastly brave because they are in a ship above the ground. They can't just dive into the water if they want to escape something. So they're very brave. They're adventurous. They are, I can't say skilled at or adept at, but they have a sense of trading, fairness. They know what piracy is, and they're not necessarily pirates. That kind of more goes along the lines of Sky Raiders. So that's where they differ. They have a slight honor about them as far as that's concerned, and how to deal with shipping lanes and interactions with other airship crews and land lovers, as they're affectionately called in this world, not necessarily in Earthdawn. So with the rise of boat-centered movies over the last 20 years or so, with Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean, Master and Commander and such, and like I said, other TV shows based upon people living on a ship all at the same time, that's where there's a camaraderie aspect as well to air sailors that not necessarily everybody else gets, because on a ship you have to act like a team, and you and 5 or 6 other air sailors all work in conjunction to keep your ship afloat and, repel boarders, find jobs, so forth and so on.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, the drawing the like Master and Commander Horatio Hornblower to use the novels, or Pirates of the Caribbean, basically the concept that's that comes up there is kind of like classic Age of Sail, right? Like
yes.
Sort of like 18th and 19th century pre-industrial revolution, but basically like age of sail, like before you get steamships and stuff like that.
Exactly.
But yeah, so
this is all sailing and rowing.
Like that's and using that as sort of the inspiration, actually, that works really well. Cool.
Yeah. So I tell people who've tried or wanted to make an air sailor, not tried, but wanted to, I'm like, you have to have a little bit of daring do and a little bit of Errol Flynn.
Yeah. A little bit of like Captain Blood, I think is the Errol, like that sort of thing. There is, a little bit of Swordmaster to them.
A bit. Yeah.
Not quite the Three Musketeers level,
or
Zorro level that would typify a Swordmaster. But yeah, there is definitely that social and finesse aspect to the air sailor. The comparison that I like to make when kind of putting it within an Earthdawn context is the classic comparison of the Air Sailor versus the Sky Raider, right?
Yes, I do the same.
Which is to say that I've always likened the Air Sailor to the Navy and the Sky Raider to the Marines.
That's a different take on it.
Which is to say, like, for example, there is a very strong association, and we're going to, I guess, briefly talk about Sky Raiders here just within this context.
We have to.
But that because of the way it's typically presented, that Sky Raiders are almost always seen as trolls or very troll culture centric.
Yes.
That even races that are not trolls tend to come from areas that are very heavily influenced by trolls, whether that be the Twilight Peaks or other higher mountain ranges where there are troll moots that would have Sky Raiders. That it's a very sort of culturally troll thing. One of the things that I did in one of my first long-term campaigns was actually set things up within the Throlic Navy that there were the air sailors who would be the ones who would typically be sailing the ships and operating the vessels and whatnot. And that then the Sky Raiders that would go along with them would be the more combat troops. They would be the ones that would ride on the ship and then like do the ground assault or go over to cross to attack the other ship, like that kind of thing. That there was a sense of the Sky Raider or setting up the Sky Raider, so to speak, within the context of the Throlic Navy as the heavy combatant as opposed to the one operating the ship. And there is a little bit of that came through in the redesign of the discipline when it comes to 4th edition. And part of that is, I think, leading on from the development that happened over the course of the game line as air sailors and their role within the setting kind of got fleshed out. Because it was something that was added in later and not necessarily conceived from the ground up the way a lot of the other disciplines were. So
fair. I can reference that with a line from A Few Good Men. They're talking to the Marines. The Navy characters are talking to the Marine characters, and the Marines are like, yeah, we love you, Navy boys. Every time there's a fight, you guys give us a ride.
Yeah. Now, that's not to say that the air sailors can't fight. Far from it.
Oh, no, they can fight.
They can fight. They are not within the 4th edition framework. They are not considered a pure combat discipline. They're basically sort of 3 tiers of 3 different groupings of disciplines. There are the magicians. There are, which are obviously the spellcasters. There are what we generally term as the combat ones. Warrior, Swordmaster, Sky Raider, Cavalryman, Beastmaster, I think, is in that category. Archer.
Yes.
Archer it technically is not. Beastmaster is.
Yes.
And then there is the third group in which you have Troubadour, Weaponsmith, Scout, Thief, and Air Sailor are specialists.
Yes.
That basically that are not necessarily intended to be like top line, front line combatants. Air sailors can fight. They do get some, especially depending on how you build them, they can actually be fairly decent combatants. But they do run into the issue that their durability is not as high as the combat types.
Yeah. But that's how they're designed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly.
Combat types need higher,
again,
need higher
to kind of put them within the contrast to the Sky Raider. The Sky Raider is a combat discipline and is built that way, whereas the Air Sailor can fight but has other abilities. One of the themes that plays along really nicely and shows up a lot in Air Sailor, if you look at their stuff, and this is both within the context of the original discipline essay from first edition, but also in later stuff, is the idea of a crew and the teamwork.
Yes.
So that is a popular theme that pops up with them and some of the abilities that they have.
Yeah, I liken them to one member of a football team because they have to work completely together at all times to make sure their ship stays afloat, they stay on course, they get their cargo where they're supposed to be, or pick up their cargo if that's what the case may be. And so they don't generally operate independently, whereas most of the other disciplines can easily, and actually sometimes prefer, to operate independently. But the difference between the Air Sailor and the Sky Raider, because we're going to make the same comparison when we talk about Sky Raiders way down the line, is it's in the name. There's the Air Sailor and the Sky Raider. And the Raider does exactly that.
Yeah.
They're built for combat. They're built to take over another ship. They're built to bombard and assault and so forth and so on. And the Air Sailor is not necessarily meant to do that unless that's how you want to build your character. Yeah. And if that is, play a Sky Raider instead.
Well, I mean, you know, again, you can absolutely build a combat-focused Air Sailor.
Yes.
And as we look at some of their talent options, we'll definitely point those out.
Yeah.
It's just that the Air Sailor does not get the talents that support them being a heavy damage dealer the way that Sky Raider does. Or the way that other more combat-focused disciplines tend to be built in terms of the options that are available to them.
Yeah, yeah. They're not as blunt an object as a Sky Raider or just a warrior.
Right.
They have a little bit more rounded edges to their framework. So that being said, did anything change for the Karma Ritual from any of the other previous editions to the 4th edition? I've not looked that one up. I know you tended to try and put new stuff in as much as you possibly could.
I mean, so. I talked about this in another episode where we did try and do some things where we presented new approaches to old information. But I don't think, broadly speaking, we did any drastic changes to the Karma Ritual for any of them. Any of the disciplines. I think the thing that I was looking for was any changes that were made were done primarily to make the sample or generic Karma Ritual that's presented be one that is usable in a broader array of circumstances. Because I remember stories of game masters who would be rather harsh on their players by maybe putting them in circumstances where they would not be able to perform their Karma Ritual.
Oh, that's just mean.
Yeah, well, like, for example, the Karma Ritual is described in the book, and I don't remember whether this is for the Air Sailor or the Sky Raider or whatever, but, like, it required them to be under an open sky.
This is for the Air Sailor. You are correct.
And so consequently, I'm going to have the group spend an extended period of time underground in a care. Oh, sorry, Air Sailor, you can't perform your Karma Ritual to refill your karma. Given the approach that I had towards karma in 4th edition, that was something that I wanted to try and avoid. And actually, looking at the text now, it does mention in the text here in 4th edition, does mention the open sky.
Yes.
And this is one of those things where if I could go back, I don't know whether I would either change that or whether I would actually, and I might have done this, I'm not going to go back and check the text specifically to make sure, but try and emphasize the fact that the Karma Ritual that is presented in the book is not the only Karma Ritual that is possible for that discipline.
Yeah, it's an example of one.
It is an example. I think every individual adept's Karma Ritual, while maybe broadly similar, are going to have nuances and quirks and bits of individuality that highlight their relationship with the discipline. So, and certainly with my attitude towards karma in 4th edition, especially, which is, I want you to have it. I want you to spend it. I don't want there to be any headaches in terms of like having that available. I don't want people to have karma rituals that basically cut them off from something, at least for extended periods of time.
Yeah. Well, because this one's easily modifiable. If I were a player requesting you, the game master, to say, well, how about I just modify this so that I can use it anywhere instead of having to stare at an open sky?
Yeah. I mean, that's
I can find something like a leaf, a large leaf, or a blanket or something like that, and I can create my own breeze. And as long as the breeze hits my face, I can imagine that I'm air sailing through the sky on my next journey.
Like basically the purpose of a karma ritual in general is a way for the adept of any discipline to get in touch with the fundamental mystical philosophy that underlies their ability to do magic.
Yeah.
And being unable to perform their karma ritual would cut them off from the magic in a way that, I mean, it can make for interesting stories, I suppose, but broadly speaking, it's not something that I want to see like as a hindrance rather than a role-playing aid.
Yeah. So I was just asking if anything did ultimately change, but I think you clarified enough, which is to say any karma ritual listed in any of the books is an example. And so first edition, second, third, fourth, whatever, all of those are examples. If you want to make your own, I think even in the first edition it said, please do so and consult with your game master about, I can use this. Where can't I use this? Could I ever be handicapped if this is my karma ritual somewhere?
Yeah.
As you said, underground.
And again, it's within the context of how karma worked in, say, first edition, where you could only buy so many points per day and you needed legend points to purchase them, and a very different philosophical approach to how karma worked within the framework of that rule structure.
Yes.
I think having a situation where you might not be able to perform your karma ritual is a different context and a different circumstance than it would be, say, in fourth edition. Because the idea being that maybe your air sailor, your karma ritual would not be able to be performed while you're underground in a care, but because of your ability to build up a pool and have a pool to draw from that is independent of a particular like narrative time frame.
Yeah.
Whether that be a scene or a story or whatever, that you could have a situation where, you know, basically by going underground and spending an extended period of time underground, that could cause problems for an air sailor because they are not in touch with the open sky and the things that make them what they are.
Yeah.
And so consequently, having that magical resource be drained and to potentially have that be a concern, I mean, that's something that could even work within fourth edition. Within a limited context, assuming it's something that the player is on board with and is willing to explore as an option. Again, you are collaborating with your player group. You are not imposing your will or dictating to them how things are supposed to go. If they're on board with doing that kind of exploration and role playing and whatnot, fantastic. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
And understand that it might not be something that you wanted to do for a really long period of time, because the rules within a certain context do expect you to have karma available. And again, you're looking at the different size karma pools and stuff like that. So, I mean, generally speaking, you're probably, again, given that the Player's Guide was the first book that I was really working on, there were probably not as drastic changes to that as you would see if perhaps I were to sit down with that experience and start over from scratch.
So we'll save that for fifth edition, which is eons away. So I think it was really cool that fourth edition listed the half magic abilities for each discipline, and the air sailors I think is very cool because it's knowledge of airships, designs, trade routes, flight paths, maintenance, repair, and construction of airships, which is, again, like I said, they are crew of a ship and not just the assaulting force launched from a ship.
Sure. Yeah. Half magic was a concept that was added later on in first edition's run. It was something that was added in, I believe, in the Adept's Way. So it was relatively early in the development of the game, but it was not something that was there from the very beginning, at least as an audience, like as a consumer of the line. And one of the things about Earthdawn as a system, especially with its focus on disciplines as the primary characters and their magical talents, it does not have, broadly speaking, as robust a generic, a mundane skill system as you would find, say, in other games like Shadowrun, or things like that. And I think, and that's an intentional design choice, I think, because the focus of the game is on the magical abilities, and you don't necessarily want to dilute that by adding on a huge amount of mundane skills that aren't really related to the focus of the disciplines. The role that half magic plays within that context, and it always kind of has, is to act as a substitute for all of the stuff that these people should know and be able to do simply by virtue of who they are.
Yes.
Without needing to worry about spending points to build up, a whole bunch of knowledge and non-disciplined skills to reflect those abilities.
Yeah, I look at half magic as your character has grown up in this world and would know this stuff. You don't. And I'm in a landlocked state. I've not been on a whole lot of boats in my entire life, and I've certainly never been on a boat in the air. So there's that. My character has grown up wanting to do this, following this path, and would know this stuff inherently. And that's what half magic is there for.
Yeah. And the half magic, the step of half magic, in previous editions, it was half of the character's circle, rounded up. And the change to make it just equal to circle, was largely just a number simplicity sort of thing.
Yes.
For anybody who might have had that thought, it can go either way. It's just simply that, it's easier to just add your circle rather than have to figure out half round, like to just, I mean, not that the math is hard, but it's just an extra step that you might have to go through to figure things out.
Yeah, and we talked earlier about too much record keeping as far as a number of, how do I find this step, or record keeping on legend points. Just your half magic is so much simpler without doing half of it and round it up. Okay, just
So I mean, so broadly speaking, half magic should be able to, in my opinion, like designers' intent. Half magic is supposed to basically cover any of the knowledges that a practitioner of that discipline should have, the limits of which obviously will vary from campaign to campaign, which is why half magic is kind of generally vague anyway.
Yes.
But it should cover any of the knowledge skills that a practitioner of that discipline should have.
Yeah.
And any kind of basic practical skills that are not provided by an existing talent that they get.
Fair.
And when we get into some of the other disciplines, we'll see examples where we specifically like made that clear, where it wasn't in previous editions. So that's the general intent. You generally shouldn't be able to do anything super fancy with your half magic, but you should be able to know stuff and do basic stuff.
Yeah. It's more information gathering and just a little help along the way to say, would my character know this? Roll some dice. Yes, they would. That's it. Yep. It's more fulfilling your professional experience.
And the more experienced you become, the better you get at it. When you've got an experienced journeyman, 7th or 8th circle adept, or in this case air sailor, they're going to know a lot more than
Yeah.
a wet behind the ears, deckhand.
Totally. Yeah, not quite the 10,000 hour rule, but it's something along those lines. So, okay, now we have to talk about talents because we're half an hour in, haven't touched the fun stuff.
So
I think we talk about discipline talents first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first circle discipline talents.
So first off, air sailors, we're going to talk about free talents.
Okay. Right, they get a free talent. Sorry.
They get a free talent. This was something that we introduced in 4th edition, and I was in the course of restructuring and simplifying in some regards how disciplines were set up, trying to remove, for lack of a better term, dead space in their selections. That some disciplines have things that they really need to have, but that might not necessarily that they need to have just conceptually, or should be able, or like fit thematically, but might not necessarily be used a lot. Because while the air sailor is a discipline that in theory functions and operates around an airship, you can have an air sailor in a game, and you can have a game that does not revolve actually around airships that much.
Yes.
And then it would be kind of annoying, I think, as a player of an air sailor to have, as their they get the free talent air sailing, but to have that as a standard talent that you would need to spend legend points to raise in order to reflect that you have this increased ability if it doesn't come into play that much. And so that's what the free talents are. And all of the specialists that I mentioned earlier, they're all the ones that get a free talent. And that free talent basically reflects their shtick, the thing that they should be able to do, and you get it for free, it increases, and it basically reflects that you can do the thing that you're supposed to be able to do.
I call those the big D, the big U, the big H. Duh. You should get that no matter what. And you're right. Air sailors getting their air sailing talent for free. Done. Yep. Big duh.
Yeah. The one sort of, so you've got the air sailing for air sailor. You've got entertainer for troubadour, which basically allows them to have a talent that allows them to do any kind of performance related stuff. That makes sense. You've got craftsman for weaponsmith, and that's actually where kind of it came from originally, was looking at weaponsmith and say one of the problems with weaponsmith is they should be able to like make weapons and armor among other stuff, but the only real way for that to happen within the framework of the rules in previous editions was for them to sink legend points into the skill, unless you just made it a half magic ability.
Totally.
And so it kind of came along those lines from the thinking of there. So they're air sailing for free, so they can always make rolls on that. They don't need to spend legend points. There's an optional rule in the companion that you can use to increase your free talents if you want to. If for some reason you've got a talent that you want to increase higher than
your circle,
equivalent to your circle, that's fine.
Cool.
But again, you get it. You should have it. But you don't need to worry about, I'm wasting legend points on something that
I should get experience for just by doing it because this is what I do for a living.
Right. And part of that is a recognition of how the advancement changed with regards to needing to purchase discipline talents as opposed to having a little bit more option in like what talents you would actually increase to qualify for in 1st and 2nd edition. And so recognizing that, air sailors need to have air sailing, therefore we need to give it to them as a discipline talent. This is in 3rd edition.
Yes.
Therefore, they have to spend points in it in order to increase. But if we have a game that doesn't deal with airships or air sailing that much, they are basically sinking a bunch of legend points into something they never use.
Yeah.
So, let's give it to them for free. It's not overpowered for them to have it, I don't think within the framework of everything else, it is not game breaking for them to have this, non-combat ability that basically lets them do their thing.
Yeah, because since it's not a combat oriented thing, there's no inherent power available to it to overbalance a game. It's how to fly a ship, which yes, could save your butt in the right circumstances by all means. Saving the party. However, it's not going to be called into effect at every single combat round. It's air sailing. So
by the free talent, they can spend karma on that. And then, as happens actually with several of the specialist disciplines, their first circle karma ability, they may spend karma once per round on any action taken while on board an airship, which includes air sailing.
Yes, it's location based.
So they can, but they can double up. That basically means that they can double up on spending karma on an air sailing test.
Ooh,
they can spend one karma on it for being a Well, this is something we have talked about elsewhere. But basically, the rules on karma spending. You can spend multiple karma as long as the source of each karma point is from a different thing. Mm-hmm. It being a talent for your discipline is one source. If you have a discipline karma ability, that is a second source.
Yep.
And so that would allow you to spend 2. If there are other things that you get from other places that allow you to spend karma, then you could do that as well. But generally speaking, you're looking at the ability to maybe spend 2 points of karma, specifically on air sailing, but then a karma on any test that you make on an airship, which includes maybe skill checks or, things maybe that are other talents or whatever. So basically, air sailors are good on airships. They therefore have the ability to spend karma to get that edge when doing things on it.
Right. So if you say you've got a rank 1 in air sailing, use your first circle, and your attributes is step 6, you're rolling a step 7, so you've got a D12 for air sailing. Then you add karma to it because it's a free talent, and you're rolling a D12 plus a D6, and then you want to spend a point of karma on it. You got a D12 and 2D6 to get your air sailing done. Yeah, you should be good at that. Cool. So discipline talents, the ones that you automatically get, these are standard again, big D, big U, big H. Talents that you're going to have automatically: avoid blow, which I think you should be as a swashbuckler; climbing, because you have to climb the rigging; melee weapons, because you have to fight; and air weaving, because everybody gets weaving; and then wind catcher, one of my absolute favorites.
Yep. Basically, looking at this is the rank scrub. This is the brand new, fresh out of the academy air sailor.
Yeah.
Wet behind the ears. Melee weapons so that they can fight if they need to. There is an expectation, obviously, because your airships are a target for raiders.
Yep.
And so you need to be able to defend yourself. Avoid, so to drive off attackers. Avoid blow to avoid, to try and not get killed when you are in a fight.
The most useful discipline, the most useful talent in the entire game. Sorry, avoid blow.
One of certainly up there.
Yes.
Climbing. Obviously for scaling the rigging and things like that. We'll come back to that here in just a moment.
Yeah.
Air weaving, which is the thread weaving variant for air sailor. All disciplines in 4th edition get their thread weaving at first circle.
Yes.
Because of the removal of karma ritual as a separate talent, which in previous editions was sort of a representation of how attuned you were to your discipline, because it reflected how quickly you could refund or rebuild your karma pool.
Yes.
Since we got rid of karma ritual and as its own distinct thing, what would we have in that place at first circle that would reflect a character's attunement to their discipline? Thread weaving is the one that everybody gets uniquely. The fact that it would allow people to start using magic weapons, magic items earlier is a bonus.
Yes.
And I mean, I never thought it was a huge problem that everybody except spellcasters didn't get it until 4th circle later on.
I didn't either. I didn't really have a selling point.
I think the advancement through the novice circles are fast enough. And I think that making it so that thread items don't become accessible until you've got a little bit more experience in the game is a nice thing. But, there are people who didn't like it. And so moving thread weaving to first circle compared to previous editions basically does the job philosophically that Karma Ritual did, and opens up something that would make people happy going forward.
Yeah,
and then Wind Catcher
just fine too.
And then Wind Catcher, in the unfortunate instance that you fall overboard, in theory allows you to survive a fall. Obviously, at low ranks, it is less useful.
Yeah, and less likely you're going to survive, but yeah.
Well, it's not. I think it's only a difficulty 6 to. I think it's just a flat difficulty. Like the difficulty is it's a flat number. It's not based on
how far you're falling or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the Wind Catcher. Let's see. Yeah, it's a difficulty 6.
Yes, I'm just looking that up now. But you can safely fall from a maximum height equal to your rank times 100 yards. So
yeah. So I mean,
500 yards up in your first circle,
you're out of luck.
Don't fall overboard.
Yeah, and there was actually a discussion that I saw. I forget where now, off the top of my head. I think it was on a forum maybe, or possibly in our Discord, where somebody was saying, "Oh, well, that limit doesn't matter because you just wait to activate it until you are that distance from the ground." It's like that's not the intention.
No.
First off, there's a thing called terminal velocity, and actually how long it takes to fall.
Yes.
Is actually doesn't take that long to fall. A few hundred yards.
I think to reach terminal velocity takes about 12 seconds. I think is the maximum, which is basically. I mean, around.
Obviously the falling rules we do not have worked out the physics involved and how long it takes to fall and stuff like that. But the idea being that if you are higher than your wind catcher safe distance, you're out of luck. The wind catcher is not going to help you.
No.
I think
falling is bad.
I don't know whether in previous editions, whether there was an option, maybe a knack or something that would allow you to subtract your air if you were falling farther than your safe wind catcher height, to subtract that distance from the distance fallen, in terms of maybe reducing damage from the fall. But I don't know how practical that actually is when you're talking about, it's probably okay when you're falling 120 yards, but when you're falling 400, the difference between the damage from a 300-yard fall and a 400-yard fall is probably not going to save your life.
No, it's instead of breaking 200 bones, you're going to break all 216. That's it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So that's what you get as a first circle, those 5 discipline talents. Everybody gets those, and they are the really basic starting toolkit for an air sailor.
Yeah, because those you're going to use forever, and those should be your core skills you learn when you first hop on the boat and decided to follow this path.
Now, so, yes. the one thing that I want to call out here is climbing. Climbing is sometimes pointed to as a problem for windling air sailors. Because the idea being, well, they can fly, why would they need to climb? I recognize that.
Yeah.
Keep in mind from our discussion about windlings a few episodes ago.
Yes.
They cannot fly all the time.
Correct. They can't maintain that.
They can't. I mean, if they're just flying, up and down on the airship, that's probably okay. But if there are storms, which you are frequently going to run into, rain, high winds, things like that.
Oh, you're up
when
in the
you
air.
Are sailing at altitude, you may want to, go the old-fashioned way as opposed to flying, because windlings are not very heavy. They don't have a lot of mass.
They will get carried away in a strong breeze.
Yeah. So that is something to keep in mind. If you really are dead set against a windling air sailor, your windling air sailor having climbing, I hereby give the game master permission to swap out climbing for another, one of the options that's listed in its place, and have that be a discipline talent. So that's fine. Actually, good options for that might be distract, first impression, speak language.
Probably not Great Leap for a windling. So,
well, yeah, again, Great Leap. Again, one of those things that why would you want to take that when you can fly?
Exactly. But acrobatic defense, I will always be in favor of acrobatic defense.
Yeah, acrobatic defense. That's not a bad one. So we're kind of touching on the options that are available, and you can pick one of these at each of your circles. The novice options, we've got acrobatic defense.
Yep.
This basically allows you to boost your physical defense in combat against groups of enemies, making it harder for them to hit you.
Yes.
Distract, which is a new talent that was in, it's a new talent that was introduced in 4th edition.
Yes.
The idea being that you it is a teamwork talent. Distract on its own doesn't really do anything. distract works really well when you have allies that can take advantage of the fact that you have distracted your target.
Yes.
It's kind of like taunt in some respects, but it is intentionally designed to allow to like draw the target's attention to you so that your friends can take advantage of that and flank them and get blindside bonuses and you know, basically things like that.
Yeah.
So it works really well when you've got groups. It works really well, especially thieves love characters that have distract talent.
Yes.
Because if you distract someone, when a target is distracted, they are basically considered to be open to surprise strike damage.
Mm-hmm.
So we tried to build in some synergies like that in some of the talent selections.
Yeah.
First impression.
Distract harkens back to the whole teamwork aspect that Airsailers
right. Well, exactly. Yeah.
on. Yes.
On its own, distract is, if you are alone, distract is not going to do anything to help you.
Yeah.
Distract is going to help you when your allies then are able to take down the target faster because they catch them off guard.
Yes, and Airsailers get it at Novice talent options, and Sky Raiders don't get it until Journeyman. So there's the difference, folks.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised that Sky Raiders actually get it at all.
I just looked it up, so I had to make sure.
I know Warriors get it as an option early. Swordmasters, I think, get it as an option early because it's kind of thematically appropriate for both of them. But I'm actually surprised that Sky Raiders get it. It doesn't actually, it's not a huge surprise, but it's not something that I would immediately think of as being in the typical Sky Raider bag of tricks.
Yeah, fair. No worries.
First impression, social talent.
Yes.
Great Leap is useful not only for the ability to cross distances, but also in its secondary role as working as an avoid blow against environmental threats, like collapsing sails, falling rigging, broken mast, things like that.
Yes.
Basically the ability to jump free to avoid taking damage from something like that.
Gotcha.
Haggle, obviously, social, again, a social talent, one that is like in the role of Airsailers as merchants, like working on merchant ships and whatnot, to be able to negotiate the price of the cargo. That's worthwhile.
Yes.
Maneuver is another combat talent.
Yes, love maneuver.
That is one that allows you to boost your physical defense against or allows you to basically get a bonus to your physical defense against a particular target and enhance your attack against them.
Yes.
Navigation should speak for itself. Yeah. Obviously, as a sailor, you would have not all air sailors are going to be navigators, and I wouldn't allow an air sailor to use half magic to navigate.
No.
But there are air sailors that will, like, there will be a navigator on the ship. There are air sailors that will know that, so it is an option for them. Totally. Speak language, again, obviously, as a social ability.
Yeah. Part of your merchant
being able to talk to people who might not speak the common tongue. Taunt kind of serves the same role as distract, with a little bit less of a more focused on just kind of debuffing the enemy.
That's your swashbucklers. I'm going to talk.
Yeah, that's a little bit of the proto swordmaster influence creeping in there. It is a talent that is more useful solo than distract. And then throwing weapons. Not every air sailor is going to need ranged weapons, ranged combat, but throwing weapons is the one that they would have, because typically an air sailor likely would have a knife or a belaying pin, maybe, or something like that they would have that they could throw. Missile weapons, when you're talking about like bows and crossbows, not really along the lines of thinking when it comes to like the Age of Sail concept.
No.
That there might very well be crewmen on an airship that have those, but they might be, say, a multidisciplined archer air sailor.
Yeah.
Or even possibly an archer who just happens to pick up air sailing as a skill, because it is available as a skill. It is not exclusively a magical ability.
Yes. Yeah. But
because there will be maybe adepts of other disciplines on airships who are not necessarily air sailors, but still fill a role. And so, like an elementalist would be a valuable addition to an airship crew.
Yes.
And so there would be some of those as well. So those are all options. And obviously, basically and you can end up over the course of your novice 4 circles, get 4 of those. Mm-hmm. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, not like 10 choices, I think.
Yeah. So
you're not going to be able to pick all of them, but the ones that you pick, you basically pick, like, are you going to be making a character? Like, is your role in the group going to be, because charisma is an important attribute for air sailors, charisma, dex, and willpower. If you're going to be like a higher charisma, and maybe like if your group doesn't have a troubadour, mm-hmm. right? Is your group gonna, like, are you gonna end up being like the face person, like the front man of the crew,
yes.
and needing to pick up the social talents, and then you pick up like first impression, speak language, haggle, things like that. Taunt.
Yeah.
Which is charisma based, mm-hmm. As opposed to distract, which I think is not. What is distract? Distract is also charisma based.
Yeah.
So
okay.
they're both charisma based. Are you going to be making more of a? Does your group maybe not have as strong a close combat setup? Mm-hmm. Well, then you might want to be looking at like distract, acrobatic defense, maneuver, a great leap, things like that allow you to handle the combat aspect of things a little bit better.
Yeah.
Or maybe a little bit of both, where mm-hmm. your group might have a strong situation, like a strong representation in a particular sort of role, but you might pick up some things to help supplement that.
Yeah, if you've only got 3 or 4 players, then you need to broaden your aspects and what you want to choose as well.
Right.
And I thought of a good reason for throwing weapons versus missile weapons. Missile weapons, like you said, bows, crossbows, and things like that, would possibly get caught in the rigging if they're slung around you and would mess up your going up and down and around the ship. Whereas a thrown weapon is very small, handheld, can be tucked in a pocket or held between your teeth. Again, swashbucklers.
Yeah,
and
or just like a belt knife or something like that.
Yeah, just the practical, physical aspects of it. I see throwing weapons completely on your side on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So heading into second circle, third and fourth, before we get to Journeyman, your automatic discipline talents are awareness, which is a enhanced version of just a perception roll because you're specifically looking for something.
Yeah, basically, and again, sort of the idea that you have, like, say the crewman up in the crow's nest, or the person keeping watch, kind of looking out for hazards, not only maybe other attacking ships, but wildlife or environmental hazards, like being able to see a storm in enough time to avoid it, or batten down the hatches or whatever,
or even looking for a landmark on the ground below your ship.
Yeah. That greater ability to spot things, it's incredibly valuable.
Yes. Third circle, you get empathic sense. So tell me why that one was in there.
That is a talent that is strongly reliant on the teamwork theme.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically one where the bonds between crewmen take on an almost mystical aspect, right?
Yes.
That you start to sense how your fellow crewmen feel, and that helps you work together and deal with problems and things like that. So it's in the theme of the teamwork and social aspects.
So almost like a camaraderie thing.
Yeah.
If you decide to use it and check on your crew. And then in fourth circle, they get wound balance, which I've always loved. I've never liked the way it's been worded as far as titled wound balance, but I know it's for preventing a knockdown, which on a ship is a fantastic thing that you don't go overboard. So I can absolutely see why that one is there.
It's called wound balance because the primary function, the primary knockdown tests primarily result from suffering wounds.
Yes.
But it can apply to any time that you are making a knockdown test if somebody is intentionally using the attack to knockdown combat option, things like that.
Yeah.
So any time that you might risk being knocked down, you would roll that.
Totally.
And again, a useful a useful ability to have on an airship.
Not to go overboard. And then, so let's cover the discipline talents for 5, 6, 7, and 8, and then we'll go back to the options. So fifth circle, again, a social thing, heartening laugh. You can boost up your own crew with that, or your own allies.
It helps shake off fear, which is really, really nice when you consider that the primary rival of the air sailor is the Sky Raider, who has the fear-based battle shout and battle bellow.
Mm-hmm. So they can just laugh.
So the heartening laugh will help counteract that.
Yes.
Want to mention before we move on to the other talents, the fifth circle discipline ability, collaborate.
Oh, sorry.
Very, very strong teamwork theme there. As a simple action, the air sailor can take 1 strain to give an ally a +2 bonus to a test towards achieving a common goal.
Nice.
All they need to do is describe how they are helping, and they can provide a +2 bonus to a friend's test.
Getting it done. Yeah. Cool.
And again, strong teamwork theme.
I love it. That works.
Sixth circle.
And why would you not get air dance as an air sailor? Come on.
Well, yeah. So it's an initiative booster. Basically that it allows you to act more quickly. Mm-hmm. The air dance theme, the air elemental theme that kind of goes along almost without saying for an air sailor, really, really useful. It's a nice combat talent and does provide the option for additional attacks, which is not something that is baked into the air sailor progression the way that it is with, say, a swordmaster or a warrior.
Yeah.
Air dance becomes available much earlier to those disciplines, but it does open up that as a sort of combat option.
Yeah, fair. Going into seventh circle, inspire others. Again, teamwork and the camaraderie aspect of the air sailor discipline. And then eighth circle, Lionheart. Is
another anti-fear talent.
Yeah. And when you're, sometimes 1,000 feet up in the air on a boat in the storm, by all means, Lionheart. You need that one there as well.
Yep. Basically, what Lionheart does is it allows you, if you are affected by a fear effect, it increases your ability to shake it off.
Yeah.
Really,
steals your resolve.
Really helpful against Sky Raiders again, but also against horrors or anything else that would be imposing
attacking you from
any
the
kind
sky.
of fear-based penalties to you.
Totally. Yeah. So as I said, as you asked me the elevator pitch, they are very brave because they're doing the really hard work on a boat 1,000 feet up with no lifeline, and if you fall overboard, it's not water you're diving into; it's air. So a whole lot of things in here to improve your resolve, resist fear, and resist getting scared. So
and work together with your crew, whoever that may be.
So this being the survival guide in the podcast, we'll go through the talent options at Journeyman level. So air speaking
allows communication with fellow crewmen. When you're working on an airship and perhaps it's loud because of combat or because you're at opposite ends or you're up on the you're up at the top of the mast. Basically being able to communicate and make yourself heard.
Yeah, or just high winds and you can't hear anything there.
Yeah, or high winds.
Yep.
Yeah.
Battle bellow, again, same thing the Sky Raiders get, which is instill fear in your opponent. Conceal object, always love that idea.
Yep. Useful for those small weapons and whatnot.
Yeah. Engaging banter, again, social aspect, which is holding the attention.
That's one that is intended in some ways to perhaps forestall or avoid combat. Mm-hmm. Again, sort of a social distracting kind of thing.
Yeah, that's your swashbuckler there. I will taunt you a second time. No, kidding. Etiquette, of course, they know...
Etiquette, straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah, they know proper ways of doing things, especially as far as engaging in merchant back and forth.
Yeah, but within any kind of social context.
Yes.
Whether that's, in a seedy,
rundown bar. Yeah.
Seedy dockside bar, or, in the high value, flowing with silver treasuries of the merchant princes kind of thing.
And going back to your whole aspect of perhaps they're, in the real world example, they're the Navy, there's an etiquette to certain things. There's an order and chain of command to a ship, and there is a proper procedure for doing certain things, either on the ship or off the ship, and how to conduct yourself off the ship too. So
yeah, and a recognition of there are certain ways to behave and the ability to do that within other social contexts as well.
yeah, and I know two of them. The next two of them on the rest of the list remind me of the whole swashbuckling aspect of Errol Flynn. Graceful exit.
Yep. Graceful exit, a way to get out of combat when it has already started.
Yep.
Leadership, obviously, if you're going to be talking about a crew.
Yes.
When you start getting into journeyman circles, you're going to have, officers and, first mates and captains and things like that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, anyone who's going to be taking a leadership role on a ship is probably going to have leadership as a talent, if not a skill.
And even if you're not, even if you're the only air sailor in your entire party of say, swordmaster, warrior, and so forth, you're going to be able to want to pull them together as a team. Because that's the formation that you're used to operating in, and your leadership would be useful for that. And of course, if you have battle bellow and things like that, you have to have resist taunt because you want to be able to
resist taunt. Yeah, whereas the Lionheart and Heartening Laugh, which are discipline talents, which like directly counteract sort of the fear, resist taunt is the kind of broad-based like social, basically anything that targets social defense.
Yes.
Can potentially be shaken off or avoided through the use of resist taunt.
Yeah, love that one.
Generally speaking, the reflexive defensive talents, the three of them being avoid blow, resist taunt, and steal thought.
Oh, love steal thought.
Right. Generally speaking, we try to give at least two. Like try to give them as options to like as many times as we can to make them as options so that if people decide that they want them, they have them available.
Yes.
And obviously resist taunt where it basically was a trade-off of like, okay, do we like, again, looking at, we have a limited number of choices of discipline talents.
Yes.
Well, it makes more sense where the air sailors are more likely to be coming into conflict with Sky Raiders for those directly fear-related talents, which do not necessarily target social defense, to have those baked into the standard progression and have resist taunt as an option for those who want to go into that kind of more social social direction.
Yeah, I can't see it as being a standard that everybody should have as opposed to just one of those, depending upon your campaign, you might need it, you might not.
Yep.
Take it if you want it. Second weapon, always found useful for, again, the swashbuckling aspect. That wasn't the one I was referring to.
That gives you a second attack if you are going to be going with more of a combat build. There are not as many combat options that are available to journeyman. You might have noticed as we go through these.
Yep.
Second weapon and surprise strike, the other option that we hadn't gotten to yet, are really the strongest combat choices in there. That mostly there are talents in their option list that allow you to refine the role, or perhaps if you're going on a more combat themed build, you might take things like battle bellow, as one of your options.
By fourth circle,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, by fourth circle,
but
definitely. If you're still engaging in more combat, yes, battle bellow, second weapon, surprise strike.
Surprise strike. And again, looking at surprise strike. Remember what I was talking about earlier with distract. The distract talent basically sets up the target to be susceptible to surprise strike.
Yes.
So building that synergy where some because both of those are options, you might have on a crew, some members of the crew have distract and others have the surprise strike, and they will work together, to take advantage of the synergy of those talents.
Yeah, and surprise strike is the second one I thought of completely when swashbuckling came to mind.
Yep,
it just does.
So we're going to avoid the because it's in a separate book. We're getting we're at an hour.
Yeah.
So we're not going to go into the warden and master talent selections.
Higher circles for later. Later.
We might revisit those after we've done kind of the basics for everybody.
Yeah.
But that's an air sailor. The important attributes as listed. Most of the talents in the list are based, charisma and dexterity are the most common. Willpower is good because of Lionheart, and willpower just in general helps resist fear and gives you a good will give you a decent mystic armor as well. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, if you're going to be playing an air sailor, you like what we were saying earlier, you can fight, but don't expect necessarily to be able to dish out the amounts of damage that your warriors and sky raiders and sword masters and
you're not
beastmasters.
You're not the heavy. You can get in there and mix it up.
You're not the heavy.
You
can get in there and mix it up. And generally speaking, you might want to even put a little bit more of an emphasis on dexterity just to make yourself a little bit harder to hit. And to rely on speed. Look more towards the swordmaster paradigm of combat as opposed to the warrior or sky raider paradigm.
Yes.
You're not the heavy. You can mix it up, but also look at, again, as a member of a crew, if you are an air sailor in a group, one of the things that you should be looking at from a gameplay and role-playing perspective is your group is your crew, and you should be looking at ways to maximize the synergies and find out the tactics and strategies that work best for your group.
Yeah, the other talents your other players, your other characters have that you can bounce off of.
Right. Air sailors, depending on the group and who's playing them and whatnot, air sailors actually can make very effective. Like sort of second string, they can make good second string fighters. Mm-hmm. They can make really effective frontmen, facemen.
Yeah.
With their social aspect and whatnot, and culturally, they have a certain amount of cachet within the setting of Barsave.
Yep.
And they can make along with that sort of decent group leaders.
Yeah.
If there's not somebody else who is sort of stepping forward and filling a leadership role, that is something that an air sailor, even if they don't necessarily take the leadership talent, but that is a role that they, where
they would inherently try to pull that off.
Yeah, maybe in certain situations they might be the one that would take the lead in terms of organizing what needs to be done and things like that. So yeah, that's the air sailor.
Yeah, and there's your survival guide to it.
Yeah, and we will maybe have to devote a later episode, because I was thinking we might talk about this, but we got going.
Yeah.
And talking about airships and the role of an airship maybe within a game.
Yes.
Jot this down as the notes for a later episode, but the roles of airships not only within Barsave, but the role of airships in your actual like day-to-day campaign and how you might be able to take advantage of that. We probably won't visit that like right away, but something on the line there, because the air sailor, and we may touch on this when we talk about cavalrymen a little bit as well, is that focusing don't be overly concerned about focusing on airships if you have an air sailor in your group. Although keep in mind that is something that a player who chooses an air sailor probably wants that to be a factor.
Yeah, a prominent role at least.
Or, and so, maybe try and occasionally put them in situations where they can really shine in those circumstances.
Yeah.
But there are not a lot of airships. And so, there may be air sailors who do not have a ship that they are working on for one reason or another, and have adopted some ragtag band of ne'er-do-wells as their crew.
Yeah, that works. I like that idea.
And I think that'll wrap us up well, I think.
I think you are right. I can't say we've exhausted or flogged this dead horse, but I think we're done. And now that we've covered air sailors, by all means, thank you for listening, everybody. Drop us a line. Let us know what your thoughts are on air sailors at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. And it is time for you to go make your own air sailing legend.
Good night.